You're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name is Joey. This week I am joined by Dom.
Hello there.
And by Imogen.
Hello, Joseph.
For what should be a fairly positive, action-packed double game week. So let's start with moments of the week. Dom, I'm going to throw to you first.
It is seeing the knee slide again. Viktorious scoring. It's been a while, but he's still got the technique down to a T, and he's just someone I love seeing celebrate goals. He's clearly enjoying it, and he knows which corner to go to. So keeping it simple. He broke his drought, and he was pretty good last night too. So all around pretty pleased to see him scoring again.
Now I'm over the moon that he's scoring again, and I don't want to sound like I'm being a dick right up top. Did the goal that he scored, was that the hardest chance he had all night?
It was in the top 5.
Yeah, pretty much. Imogen, your moment of the week.
Robin's watch this week. Not only was there 4 keepy uppies in the Stoke game.
That was world class,
man.
Yeah.
Oh, still got it. Never lost it. And also his post-match interview at QPR when the website described him as delighted that the steward was okay. Not what I read. Not my reading of his comments. More like just interrupted the flow. We're glad he's alive, but I mean, selfish of him to do it at that moment. Was more my take on it. And you have to admire him for that.
No, absolutely. I mean, I know we're steering away from Cov and more just sort of this week's edition of What Grinds My Gears, but without Paul being here, I guess somebody needs to do it. I don't think anybody needs to say, I really hope the steward is okay. Can we not assume that that's the case?
Well, yeah. I feel like with this club, you must assume nothing.
But the outpouring of people who've presumably never met this steward, who felt the need to take to social media and say, let's hope this guy's okay. You're like, well, yeah. Is there anyone not? Is there anyone who's like, I hope he's dead? I just don't know why everyone has got to feel the need to get involved in things like that. Anyway, right. I am going to go for, I had something, but it's gone. I'm going to go for something pretty left field this week. I have been noticing the performances of a COV player who lots of people still think is rubbish. I'd like to talk to you about a little guy called Ben Sheaf. Now, I don't want to upset the apple cart. I know I'm the king of controversy on this podcast. I actually think he's pretty good.
Yeah, that's actually quite funny because I have the same opinion, but I've noticed that no one else has that opinion apart from us.
That's a unique opinion.
It's so strange.
I mean, Dom, you are very much patient zero for the Ben Sheaf fan club.
I don't think I was up there with like some of the people who were truly in the trenches for Ben Sheaf last season, where they were like, well, you know, some good players, they make costly mistakes and then they became good players. Therefore, Ben Sheaf made mistakes and he'll definitely become a good player. Last season, it wasn't great. There was a handful of decent performances, but aside from the errors themselves, it was just he was someone who wasn't really making his presence known on games, and I think that's been the big difference this season. That just looks to have that bit between his teeth, that sort of determination to want to be on the ball and show strength to win it back, and it's really quite a remarkable transformation. I think in the article I wrote about him this week for his 50th league appearance, I said, I think Ben Sheaf of this season would be the one who would be like picking the pockets of last season Ben Sheaf. He'd be that experienced championship player who he'd have hated to play against, and you can't really give him much bigger praise than that. He's been fantastic.
Yeah, it was just recently really, really outstanding. I think you're being very humble, Dom. I think that you genuinely did see Ben Sheaf perform at the Free Trade Hall as opposed to the thousands of other people that claimed to that actually didn't go. Right, I'm going to throw to Imogen first because you're going to talk to us about QPR. Now, I mentioned before we started, I know that one is a good result and one isn't a good result, but I think they're both really good performances, aren't they? Or would you disagree?
No, absolutely. I think the most frustrating thing about QPR was the loss, because I thought we matched a really quality side. Who I was thinking back to when we played them at Loftus Road I think it was in August, September time. And we were so bad that day. We just didn't get a grip of the game. They had worked it out early on. And we never looked like establishing ourselves. Whereas this was completely different. They still had very classy players, a well-organised side, but we were more than capable of handling it. And the first 5, 10, 15 minutes, it was just us. Jamie Allen was a man possessed. He seemed to have a chance every other minute. Didn't score any of them, which was concerning, but it felt like he was going to warm up into the game. And we'd come off the back of a decent win against Derby and a really poor performance, I thought, against Millwall. So I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. We'd made a couple of changes. Moore was back, which I thought was a bit harsh on Wilson, who I thought had played pretty well.
Would you have carried on with Wilson?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have strong feelings either way about them. I think they're both decent keepers, but I didn't think that Wilson had made any glaring mistakes. I was happy to keep him on, but equally, Simon Moore is a trusted goalkeeper, so I didn't feel strongly either way. I felt much more strongly about the presence of Carl McFadzean being back. What a relief to see the Granite Man back.
I think that's just very quickly before we leave the goalkeeper situation. I think that's really controversial.
What?
I'm really surprised that I just think that Moore for me is the very I think there was a period where we had Wilson and Morosi where possibly it wasn't clear about which one was number one, and that was on merit. Whereas I think that I've got no problem with Wilson necessarily, but I would have thought Moore is very much the number one in that situation.
Oh yeah. Overall, he's number one. But I think in the past, 2-3 games that Wilson had played, I thought he played all right. He hadn't given me any cause for grief. I didn't go to Derby, so he may have been less good there. But we kept a clean sheet, so it can't have been that bad. Did you not think he played all right? I
think it's less that than I think that. I know what you're saying. I just don't. I think the golfing class between the pair of them is such that when Moore is fit, I sort of don't really care what Wilson's done.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
McFadzean, more importantly.
It's just nice, isn't it? It's just nice to have him back. He's got a new lid.
You know that he's doing well when even I can't complain about him.
Exactly. He's a hero, the unsung hero. And obviously, Gyökeres was back in the starting 11. And he looked a bit tentative to start. I mean, he was getting involved and he was setting up Alan really well. They were playing quite nicely together, I thought. But I thought maybe first half he took it a little bit. He wasn't quite the Gyökeres that he's become, say, into the Stoke game. Which is understandable. He hadn't played for a while. He certainly hadn't scored for a while. But yeah, I thought the front four played quite nice football. To be honest, we weren't particularly concerned by QPR as a whole. I mean, they have some really good players. When I was listening to Dom talk about Chair and their goalkeeper, whose name escapes me, being away for AFCON, I thought, this is marvellous. And then he listed all of the players that they still have, which it's absurd. It shouldn't be allowed. I thought brother of Joe Willock, his first name escapes me.
Chris Willock?
Chris, yeah.
Chris. He was magnificent all game. I couldn't take my eyes off him. He was so good. But I thought we dealt with it reasonably well. They didn't really have. I can't remember that many attacks that they had before their goal. So it was such a shame to have conceded. We had a really good chance, like I said, from Alan. Man of the moment, Ben Sheaf passed to him, and he made a great save from the goalkeeper. And then man of the moment, Ben Sheaf, made a less good pass to, I think it was Willock, who made quite good strides up the pitch and made it well, not easy for Andre Gray, because he still had a bit to do, but that put them 1-0 up. And
did you find that goal weird?
What? Because it was against the run of play?
No, the finish. Like I think it's a really good finish. I think it's a really underrated finish, because he made it look like it was really easy, and I just don't think it was.
No, he still had a lot to do. It's quite a tight angle.
But you watch it back and you think, oh yeah, you could just kick it between a player's legs into the bottom corner, couldn't you, if you were there? But it just, I looked at it and I couldn't work out whether actually it was a really easy chance or a really difficult chance. But I kept thinking, why don't more people score a goal like that? But it might just be a sort of aberration in my own perception of the goal. I thought, I don't know whether I think it was quite a clever finish. Dom, did you have a view of it?
Yeah, I was sort of right behind it, and it looked an insane finish from where I was sitting, because you couldn't really see the angle between the defender and the goal from which he could put it in, and he just hits it so so accurately and quickly out of his feet. I was very impressed with that finish. I haven't seen a replay from a different angle, but that just looked like a moment of just sheer class.
This is going to make me sound like a nutter, but I'll tell you what it reminded me of slightly is, the Ronaldinho goal against Chelsea, where he just looks up and just realises that he's got a toe poke it, and you think, oh yeah, you could do that, couldn't you? But why doesn't anyone? It just was a moment of like speed of thought and execution that I thought was. But then you look at it again, you're like, is it just actually, is that just a goal from in the 6-yard box? And I'm really being really pseudy about it. It could be both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I think let's
goal.
go with both, Joey.
Okay.
Yeah. We picked up, I thought, pretty well from there. Still looked pretty positive and limited them to very few chances other than their number 3 absolutely skying it. And this was, of course, Shipley's second game back after his wonder performance against Peterborough. And he looked really keen for the game. I didn't think he was quite as good as he'd been against Peterborough. Obviously, the opposition was stronger. But I thought I was really surprised. I don't know how you felt about him, the Peterborough game, but I thought he looked incredibly strong, considering when we've seen him previously this season, he looked like a player who has long since been forgotten and had found his peak in League One. But fair play to him for pulling his socks up.
Strong physically, or do you mean strong as in sort of adapted to the level?
Adapted to the level, and strong mentally as well. His positioning, I thought, was much better. He was constantly hovering around the edge of the 6-yard box the 18-yard box whenever we were attacking. He was always calling for the ball, and I thought he played all right. Even before his goal, I thought he was looking pretty dangerous. And then obviously the absolute thunderbolt that was released from Todd Kane's corner. That was, I mean, surely it must have deflected. I couldn't tell from the angle. It looked like it hit at least 2 people on the way in.
And I've watched the replay a number of times, and I couldn't quite tell. I mean, it just looks like a really, really good hit. Although I must confess, so I watched it on iFollow, being sort of shackled by childcare as usual, and that I was putting washing out while I was doing it, while I was watching the game. So I knew that the goal had gone in, but I was putting washing out. Then literally, as I'd looked up to see what was going on, it was the only point of the game where the iFollow feed cut out for me, and it cut out just in long enough to go through all of the replays. And then when it came back on, everyone was just walking back to the game resumed. So I had to wait a few hours to actually to see it there and then. But on the replays that I saw, I mean, it just looks like a really, really good clean hit. But I could easily be wrong. The thing is, we obviously Shipley is subject to a lot of discussion about sort of capability and whatever else. But you can't deny that kind of at any level, he is capable of doing that, which I know is probably the least insight that's possible to bring to Jordan Shipley. But it is true, isn't it? Is that you, especially for a midfield that's been so lacking in goals, it's almost stupid that we've not turned to him a bit sooner to try and solve that aspect of it. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. No, I don't think he's the answer for anything. But I liked him. You know, he's not my favourite, but I think he did well, and I'm sure he'll be thrilled with that.
Are you talking about him past tense there, as in you're that certain that he's on his way out this January, or do you mean that you liked him in these games?
Robbins is a ruthless man.
That
goal will not have impressed him. He doesn't care.
No.
He didn't win the game. He's not interested. I can't imagine that he will stay long term. But while he's here and while he's playing like that, why not? Shove him in.
It almost would be nice if he was going to go in January, that he will be, you know, he hasn't sort of slunk off into the night. Like, he'll have had this little run of games where he's been competent and he's added to the team and he's scored a goal and everything. Is that, I guess, if that's a nice send-off, isn't it, if he is going?
Yeah, and he'll be remembered fondly. You know, like Eric Black is always remembered fondly, even though he wasn't very good. You know, he'll be this century's Eric Black, and I like that.
Yeah, but hang on, would you say that Shipley wasn't good in League One?
Yeah, no, great, fine, but you know, he wasn't like. Come on, we weren't in raptures about him. He was decent, he was solid, but
I think he's in tier 2 of the good players from that season that we went up.
Yeah, that's good.
I suppose that's I guess tier 2 in the list of players that went up from League One is probably not. It's not statue ready, bigger. Is it? Yeah. Okay. So we're 1-1 at this point then.
Yeah.
Did you think that would stay?
No, I was ready for a winner. I was convinced.
Well, you got
particularly, well, they scored. I think they scored around age 7. Yeah. And I thought it's fine. We've got 14 minutes of injury time, which means we'll score at least 7 goals. But we didn't. And to be honest, we didn't really look like we were going. Something went out of us, I think. Yeah. Probably the steward's fault.
Although saying that, we had about 8 corners, didn't we? But they all just sort of floated aimlessly nowhere, didn't they?
Yeah, we just sort of lost our impetus a bit. I don't know whether it was just deflation at conceding so late on when it's usually us scoring. It's a bit of a shame. Jake Bidwell made his debut. Hard to judge him. I'm sure Don will talk about him more fully for the state game. He sort of looks like an old-fashioned.
Yeah, he did. He does a lot of the sort of footballer you used to get, doesn't he?
Yeah. I did ask my Swansea friend about him, and he said if you put him in a bit of Bill cream and some high-rise shorts, he could very easily fit into the 1950s. Yeah, I see that from him. So I had no opinion of him, really. I don't really know why I brought him up. And that was, I can't really think there was anything. Oh, yes, Waghorn. Now, did either of you have a view on his, he tried and failed miserably to score from about 3 yards out at the end, but he was claiming it should have been a penalty. I I couldn't see it myself, but
Yeah,
maybe I'm being too harsh on him.
I had forgotten about it until you're bringing it up now, but it didn't look like a penalty to me. I've got a feeling that he's the sort of guy that thinks a lot of things are a penalty.
Yes. Yeah.
Dom, any difference of opinion there?
No, yeah, it's just agreeing with Waghorn's propensity to want penalties. I remember in the pre-season friendly against Wolves, he won a penalty. It was just basically he was in the same sort of postcode as a defender in the penalty area and flopped it. And so I think that is very much his game.
The thing with Waghorn is that I want a striker to keep appealing for everything and to be like a Michael Doyle up front. The problem is the thinking that you're, and I'm going to mention his name for the second time tonight, Ronaldinho in the Stoke game when you come on, and that you can really overcomplicate things in the box. He's a sort of Gary McSheffrey type, isn't he? Where he's like, you want your striker to have too much confidence, to have a lot of confidence, but he's got too much confidence. To the point where he envisions himself as a completely different player and a much better player than he actually is. Right, so I guess that is a segue into the Stoke game then, Dom. So, similar performance, I would say. Pretty different lineup. Were you filled with confidence going into it?
I was prepared to wait and see. I think at this stage, I mean, come on, like people reacting to team selections on Twitter, just wait and see how the team actually plays before you judge it. We've done it so many times, and sometimes team selection decisions are made because players are injured or tired, so you can't play your strongest lineup all the time. And as it turned out, I think that combination of players, both in the starting 11 on the bench, worked quite well. When the game actually started, the first 5 or 10 or so minutes, that was when I was feeling a little bit of concern because Stoke looked slightly the better team. They looked to be just a bit quicker and more technical, and that was showing. I think Tom Ince had a chance relatively early on, which seemed to suggest there was perhaps a golfing class between the two sides. But I think possibly the turning point in that first half was Gyökeres getting through on goal where balls play forward. I think Phil Jagielka took a poor touch, which from the angle I think a lot of people were sitting actually looked like a very good Gyökeres touch. And then, in typical Gyökeres fashion, a sort of a bundle of legs, uncertainty over whether he actually has control of the ball, and then he just manages to get through on goal and a shot away, which was saved, but it showed a really good avenue of attack for the team that day, where it helped us really grow in the game that we could play sort of hopeful-ish balls into Gyökeres' path, and he was going to chase them and make Stoke's central defenders work really hard just to be certain of controlling the ball, or if not, actually beating them and getting into good positions, getting them on the turn. And the confidence really grew from that point. I thought as well that Jamie Allen and Josh Eccles down that right side were making some really good runs in support. And then when you have Ben Chief and Gustavo Homer on the ball for when we're starting to get a little bit of control in their half of the pitch, there were some absolutely brilliant passing sequences in that first half, and it didn't quite lead to anything too clear cut, but it was really encouraging for a team that looked down to the bare bones a little bit. You got an academy player playing out position at right wing back, and one of our best players, Cameron Hare, on the bench. And I think it would have been easy for Hedge to drop, and I think it just shows how well coached that side is. That when everything seemed to be going against them, a few sort of frustrating missed chances, that they just stuck to their guns. They kept working hard. They kept working the ball around really well, and they just looked to have a really good shape. Everyone seemed to know their jobs, and by the end of the first half, we just looked miles a better team after compared to that early sort of scare in the opening 10 minutes, there was just so much composure and confidence to what the team was doing, except when it came to putting it in the back of the net, and it threatened to be a game summed up by that Gyökeres chance sort of midway through the first half, where I think James Chester for Stoke plays a rubbish pass and Phil Jagielka can't bring it under control, and it falls perfectly for Gyökeres on the 13-game goalless drought to just stick that in the back of the net, and he just puts it straight into the keeper's arms. Maybe he didn't quite have the time to pick the finish, but I think any striker of a decent calibre would back themselves to score that kind of chance. And
You just wanted to hit it first time.
Yeah.
The problem is that he tries to take that touch to put himself into a better position to take the defender out of play, but it just meant that they were able to set themselves a little bit better, weren't they?
Yeah, and so, and then into the second half, a few similar moments of good working of the ball, and then just not that same execution when it came to putting in the net. And Jordan Shipley had a really good chance that forced quite a good block and save. But it was threatening to be the kind of sucker punch kind of game that the QPR one proved to be. I just thought the double substitutions bring on O'Hare and Waghorn, it just added that little bit extra that the team needed. And very quickly after they came on the pitch, you can see that just having fresher legs up front forces an error from Stoke, and the ball lands to Sheaf, who places to Gyökeres and curls it into the back of the net. And that was sort of the lighting of the blue touch paper that the team needed. And they just looked really confident seeing out. There's a couple of periods where Stoke were controlling the ball and trying to work it, but it just seemed that one team was playing with a whole bunch of energy and enthusiasm and was really prepared to do everything they could to win the game. The other just felt like it was going through the motions a little bit. Maybe that's just because we're such an energetic and annoying team to play against. But like, even stuff when Da Costa came on in stoppage time and he's putting in like 3 or 4 challenges to make sure that everybody hold on to the result, it just shows, like I said earlier, that that it's such a hard-working group of players, and they really know what they're expected to do when they go on the pitch. And it's been quite a frustrating period where things haven't seemed to quite go away, and we've had some bad luck with injuries and chances in front of goal. But if you put in that kind of performance on a consistent basis, more often than not, you're going to be rewarded over the long term with good results and a good deep position. So it was just a really encouraging performance when it would have been easy to just let frustration get the better of us.
What significance do you think Waghorn specifically had as an individual rather than just fresh legs coming on?
So I think one of the main things he offers is someone who can just open up space for the players around him. He seems to be quite good at just sort of sandwiching his body in awkward positions to draw defenders around, and that opens up space. So that helped Gyökeres play more on that last shoulder of the opposing defence, which really looks to be what he is best at, just giving him licence to execute that explosiveness he has to his game. And yeah, while I think Waghorn individually isn't like our top 2 strikers when everyone's fit, he's someone who seemingly can make things make sense around him. And it'll be interesting sort of over the long run if he has a run of fitness and when Godden's back, how that all matches up. But he is a good option to have in the side as sort of a foil in attack.
Do you think now that he's back fit, there's a question about whether we, ironically, sort of, Gyökeres, Godden's gone out, Gyökeres is up front on his own and is playing well, but actually, if Waghorn is fit, do you actually go back to two up front and play Waghorn? Because I sort of think Waghorn is almost in between the two, isn't he? As I almost think he's almost a 10 or a 9, somewhere in between.
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah, I think it leaves an interesting option. Obviously, we've got quite a lot of fixtures coming up in quick succession once we get back from the Southampton Cup game. So that gives a good option to change it. I suppose the only issue with starting Waghorn is sort of just like strategy-wise, if we need to chase a game, then you're kind of looking at either taking the striker off or putting on Tavares, which might not be the worst option, but we don't really know what he's going to offer. But it's sort of it's nice to have that striker up your sleeve on the bench, I think, at the moment, especially as he's not quite fit.
That's another potential moment of the week, actually, is that there's been a lot of talk about people wanting to see Tavares, especially with Tyler Walker having gone out on loan. And then Robbins was drawn to saying that he'd been training with the first team squad for a while and that we'd see him at some point. And he's not been on the bench, has he? Was he in the bench?
He was on the bench on last night, but we were pretty much down to the bare bones. If you look at that bench, I think Josh Reed was also on it, and we didn't have a central midfielder on the bench either. So,
but it's just exceptional
Da Costa
how
showed his face.
Robbins is. I can't remember a manager that we've had that is so less sort of present when it comes to those sort of interviews. He's literally just he's not listening to the questions. He's just like, he's the people are like, all right, oh, it means we'll see him there. We're like, no, just don't put any stock in any word that he says at any point. Beautiful. The other observation I wanted to make, and I wondered if anyone thought anything about, was I wondered. I know again we're going to go back to Shipley. I thought Gyökeres was really, really helped out by Shipley's positioning, in the sense that I think that Gyökeres was really brilliant last night again, even though a lot of it didn't quite come off at the bit that we loved, which is early season, picking up the ball in quite an undangerous position, and then sort of either driving out wide or getting himself back into the box. But I thought that Shipley was always near him. And I wonder whether that's always been the case with some of the other people that we've had playing in the attacking midfield. And I just think it meant that he'd always got an out if he needed it. And he'd also got someone close to him to occupy defenders' minds so that he could drive through if he wanted to. And I just don't think we've necessarily seen that with even O'Hare or even Allen. And I don't know whether there is something in that I think we need to help Gyökeres be Gyökeres, don't we?
Yeah, I thought the same about Shipley. Initially, his constant need to help Gyökeres out, I had mistaken for him just desperate not to do any kind of defending. But I think you're right. I think he was really good. There were a couple of moments where, so mentioning earlier that I thought Gyökeres looked a bit hesitant to maybe shoot himself, rather he was passing to other people, and one of those chances was he passed to Shipley, who did something terrible with it. I can't remember. But then having looked back and watched the highlights again, I thought maybe actually Shipley and Gyökeres were working really well together in a way that he hasn't done, certainly not with Godden and definitely not with O'Hare either. So maybe it does work out. I still don't know. I saw Paul's tweet earlier about Godden and Gyökeres playing together, and it's just in terms of goals doesn't seem to be working. I wondered whether he was trying to create Kov's own Gerrard Lampard moment, but I don't know who you play Waghorn with if you're going to start him. I mean, I would prefer to play him with Gyökeres than Godden. but he wouldn't. I wouldn't pick Wycorn as a start for me. I don't know, Joey, if that's what you were thinking about earlier.
I think the problem that we've got is what Dom said. I almost think it's moot talking about it because we're now about to play so many games in February that he'll rotate the team every single game, won't he? I suppose. So I think we're gonna see every possible variation of players just on account of the fact that they're gonna be out on their feet. And I think Robbins is quite keen to keep moving players around, isn't he? I think we've had it in the past where we've considered it that we've got a settled first team, and he's not bothered about that, is he? So I think we're gonna. It almost doesn't matter what we think, or well, obviously it doesn't matter what we think, but whatever happens, we just know that we're going to see every available variation of player. But, and let's be absolutely clear about this, not Tavares. Although saying that, we saw Julian Da Costa last night, who I assumed was, I don't know, like on the naughty step, like on the full never again step.
Yeah, I thought he'd gone the way of Jabello and Hilsner, but
Yeah. Maybe this is the Da Costa renaissance. Is he ahead of Dabo in the
Where is Dabo?
I don't know. Does anyone know?
He must be injured. I mean, he looked that way in the Derby FA Cup match, where he was mercilessly beaten by Ebisele on just about every occasion. And it might be a injured ego that he needs to recover from such a performance. But yeah, I can't imagine, all things being equal, Da Costa being ahead of Darbo in the pecking order. But yeah,
some fall from grace.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Because remember early in the season where Davro was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I don't really. It's bothering me ever so slightly, even though Kane has been really, really good. It's bothering me slightly to think that, like, I think Kane is probably first choice right wing back at the minute, isn't he?
Yeah.
But I want it to always be Dabo. I almost don't care whether it comes at the detriment, generally speaking, of the team. I just think I just want to see him there every week. Right, okay. So, anything else on either of those two games before we do a little bit of Middlesbrough preview? Have we missed it? I'd say what we have missed out that's probably worth talking about very, very, very briefly is the defence, especially last night.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was both quite a good defensive performance. I thought Hyam and Clark Salter, in particular, just really stood up to everything well. But then also, those two had a couple of lovely little runs into midfield, which was fun to see. And it just really showed a growing confidence. I think something recently with Hyam is he's starting to look a lot more confident on the ball than I remember him being for quite a while. Certainly at championship level. It was a really good showing on sort of both sides for the defence.
I've really liked Clark Salter. I think that probably for a dullard like me, he's sort of easy player to like because he's so quick and that's so effective. But I am gobsmacked that Birmingham didn't do a bit more to try and keep him. Like, have they got such good defence that they can do without him?
I thought he'd had a bit of an average second season, hadn't he, with them?
It was a bit of a weird one because they brought him back and like Karanka, their manager, didn't really fancy, wasn't his sort of defender, and I think he played left back on one or two occasions rather unsuccessfully, and that was kind of it for him.
I just think he's been great, and I think that he fits so nicely into what we do. I think we're very, very lucky, aren't we, at the moment, to have 4 really, really good centre backs.
Yeah.
But I know that people were really, really sort of effusive in their praise for Hyam and for Clark Salter, and so I didn't want people, I guess largely Paul, shouting at their phones. Right, okay, well, that's everything covered then. So, Dom, Middlesbrough, quite good, I believe.
Yeah, they had looked absolutely destined for mid-table earlier in the season under Warnock, sort of a win one, lose one kind of team who weren't really going anywhere. It was kind of a weird situation going on where they'd recruited a new director of football guy, and he'd signed a few players from the continent, and Warnock wasn't really having it, and the head of football guy quickly decided that he wasn't going to have Warnock. So he appointed Chris Wilder, and Middlesbrough very quickly looked like both a good team and like Wilder's Sheffield United team, where it's a very clear template in this sort of 3-5-2 system where they're trying to very quickly work overloads, whether that's through the centre back stepping up into midfield or the sort of wider central midfielders combining with the wing backs, and that sort of overloads teams out wide and lets them get crosses and bodies into the box, and it's a very sort of high tempo kind of approach, and also some good set pieces because I've got Alan Neil as the assistant manager who was famed for it at Sheffield United, just working on all these imaginative set piece routines. So they look in a good place. They did lose on Monday night against Blackburn, but a lot of teams have been doing that relatively recently. So no real shame in that. They've also been quite aggressive in January. They've added 2 quite promising Premier League fringe strikers in Aaron Connolly, who scored a few goals in the Premier League for Brighton, and following Balogun from Arsenal, who is someone who's sort of been around the conversation for Arsenal's first team for about a year or two. But obviously they've got Lacazette and Aubameyang and Nketiah in his way, so they've loaned him out. They've yet to really get going, but it's just sort of a statement of strength from Middlesbrough. As for their individuals, at the back, I really like Paddy Mcnair, who's sort of playing as one of the wide centre backs. He's someone who's pretty interchangeable between central defence and central midfield. So he's very good on the ball, got a good physical presence about him too, and just sort of helps him really sort of step things out from defence to midfield. And then in that central midfield area, they've got Matt Crooks, who is very tall, but also sort of very energetic and reasonably technically adept to, and he's offers that link into attack as well, and he's someone who can get on the end of things in terms of crosses into the box. And also they've been using Marcus Tavernier, who is really a winger, but using him as a central midfielder just because of the system that Chris Wilder plays. There are similar areas that a winger and a central midfielder in sort of a 3 would be getting into, and that sort of just creates more overloads, which is very much the plan for this team. And another player to look out for is their right wing back, Isaiah Jones, who is a very sort of quick, slippery winger who's been playing at wing back, which just helps them even further to just stretch teams. And yeah, so the word to look out for on Saturday, if you're watching the game, is overloads, because that is what Middlesbrough will be trying to do in quite a lot of areas, and it'll be interesting to see how we try and deal with that kind of approach.
Are we going to win?
I don't really know. It'll be interesting to see, because we have played Worldies past again, and I think we have made 2 reasonably good teams look relatively ordinary. Whether we can do it against someone who's absolutely supremely in form and they're playing at home is a different question, but it's a matchup I'm looking forward to, because yeah, we've played well recently, and it'll be interesting to see us locking horns.
Lovely. Right, well, that might be us all done, unless we've got anything else that needs to be brought up. No, that sounds like a no. Right, Dom, thank you very much.
Hey, yeah, good to be on as always.
Imogen, thank you very much.
Pleasure, Joey.
And thank you, listener. Bye.